and the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah.
Oh my gosh.
It's not funny.
It's
It's
not.
a tragic moment.
Why?
Why are you laughing? What a monster.
Well, you're laughing. What are you talking about?
I
Oh
was
my
laughing at
gosh.
you, laughing at something horrible. Kelly, what's that from? I'll tell you what it's from.
Is it from the Ten Commandments? It doesn't even make
Kelly,
sense.
that doesn't make any... Have you read your Bible? You were about to talk about the Bible.
What is that from?
Oh, but how could you say Ten Commandments? I said
I
Sodom and
know,
Gomorrah.
I know.
It's from the book of Genesis.
No, I thought it was from a movie.
No, it's
referencing.
It's the indelible Max McLean's
Okay,
reading
there we go.
of Genesis that I heard once and changed my life. It's amazing.
Does he read
You know
it like
Max
that?
McLean? Yeah, well, he doesn't do the hand thing, but that's what he sounds like. And he goes, burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah. And that
Maybe you should read the Bible because I thought I would enjoy that.
Well, you know who? Let's take a pause real quick. If you could pick any celebrity to read an audio Bible, who would you pick?
Send us your answer.
Who would you
Email
who would you
us.
pick, Kel?
I don't know. These are I freeze up when you ask me questions.
You know who
like
I pick? Macaulay Culkin.
No.
Yeah.
Please no.
Macaulay Culkin. Ah!
Okay.
All right.
So
Hey guys, welcome
what
to
are we
Clearly.
doing today, Jimmy?
I feel like if anybody's coming to this podcast and they're like eager to get into the deep things of God, you have to fight so hard not to think that we're just idiots. Like for the first 2.5 minutes, you really have to go in faith. These people, especially the male, he knows some stuff. I'm gonna just trust him, even though everything he says is dumb for the first 2 minutes. But no more. The dumb stuff is done, and we're
mean
we're
in
down
this
to business. Oh yeah, for sure.
I hope not. I like your fun.
Oh, did you see how you spun it? I said dumb, you said fun. Thank you, babe.
We know what we're doing.
We are
Okay.
we're kicking it off right now. Tell the people
We're
what
kicking
we're
it
doing.
off. We, in this episode, our one goal is to convince you that Genesis is worth your time. We want you to be so excited to read the book of Genesis today. That's what we're doing.
Read it.
That you spend time in it.
Right. This whole season, we were like, and by we I mean my wife, but because we're one flesh, I can take credit for it.
Can you though?
We thought, what if we did a sales pitch for the entire Bible?
Yeah.
To like convince you it really is amazing. But it turns out there's 66 books in this thing. And so we thought, well, okay, we've got the next 20 years ahead of us. Let's do this. So we're taking a book. That's roughly the math. We're taking a book or so a week, and we're just going to take a swing at convincing you that maybe some of these you're already sold on. Maybe Genesis, you're like, this is great. But maybe when we get to Numbers, not so much. But we're going to try to convince you each episode that this book is absolutely worth your time.
Think about it like a book review from a friend.
Ooh,
That's what we're doing here. Is we're not going to give you all the details. We're not going to tell you the outline of Genesis. There's plenty of people and ministries doing that so well. We're just going to try and tell you why we've loved it, what it's done for us, and why you should read it.
Yeah, this isn't a what. These aren't what episodes so much as they are why episodes.
Yes.
So if you've never been sales pitched on a book of the Bible, get ready. Get ready, friends, enemies.
Great.
You ready?
Yeah.
Genesis.
Jimmy. So what we need some just basics.
We do need some. We need to lay the groundwork. Maybe you're coming in cold.
when
Maybe they don't know.
Yeah. So who wrote the book of Genesis?
God. Nailed it.
True.
Spirit point through
Through who though?
a human. Well,
I think this is interesting, by the way.
yes.
People don't think about it.
So the tradition says that Moses is the author of the book of Genesis. In fact, all the first 5 books of your Bible. And I think that is really interesting.
Right.
There's, scholars debate about this and that, but we're talking about such ancient texts. I mean,
Right.
4,000 years ago. So, tradition is always, Christian and Jewish tradition has always held that Moses was the author.
That Moses was the author of Genesis.
That's right.
Which is interesting because he's writing about in Genesis a time before he lived.
Yeah,
So-
which maybe makes you scratch your head and you're like, well, he wasn't there for let there be light. So how could he, And that's where you go, yeah, because God reveals things.
Right.
We have a God who transcends and enters into and can communicate. And
Right.
if you believe that,
Right.
then it's very plausible.
So who do you think he was first writing to?
His cousin Marty. It was Marty, but he called him Marty. So Moses' first audience was the Jewish community who had been taken out of Egypt in the Exodus, which we'll get to next week. So these are a group of people who are on the edge of the land God promised to them years prior, and here they are, and they're about to inherit this land, and Moses is giving these works to them to strengthen their faith, to give them vision for the land that God's bringing them into. That's kind of the thing that's going on.
Right. And in this book, as we'll talk about, to give them even a sense of their origin story and who they are.
Yeah.
Because this really is, the book of Genesis is really the origin story of this nation, Israel. And that had to be so important for them as they've just been liberated from slavery and really are wrestling with their identity.
Well, and it's questions we all ask. I mean, we all need to kind of sort out our origin story. We all need to know, where did we come from? How, how did this thing shake down? And Moses in the book of Genesis gives us the account. And it's one of the most important works of literature, of history, ever.
Which, speaking of literature, what genre of literature would you say this book is?
Well, there's actually a ton of different genres, micro genres, if you will, in the book. It's obviously a historical book because it's giving the history of some major events and people that unfold over time. So it's a history. It also has, but there's smaller things inside that, like there's poetic moments that are taking place. There's prophetic moments that are taking place. There, but in the main, I would say it's doing historical work. Would you add to that?
Yeah. No, but
You're peppering me with questions. You
I
answer
love it.
something. Yeah.
I would say it reads to me as primarily a historical book, right? There's a few other things dotted in, but it is also, I think, helpful to keep in mind that in the Jewish community, this would be their book of the law, part of, the Torah.
It's part of the Torah. That's right.
So I'm not saying I have all the answers as to why, but that helps me to go, okay, these are part of Israel's,
law code
and all of that and how they understood that. But it is a historical account.
Yeah, that's right. Also, kind of coming back to the is it history? Is it not? There's been a lot of debate about the early chapters too, because the early chapter 1 and chapter 2, is that just poetics? A lot of more liberal interpreters of the scripture are going to go, well, this is just, it's clearly poetic, therefore it must be poetry, therefore it can't be history.
Right.
But we know that's ultimately not true, even though it is poetry. We can see that. I mean, there's poetry all riddled through it. But we know it's not just poetry because you get these family trees.
Right.
And it turns out family trees require actual human beings,
right.
And in fact, the whole history of Israel hinges on whether or not these were real historical people or not. So it is squarely a history.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And there are many different ways to tell a history, right? So, but it is a historical accounting. So that's basics, right? So as we're just
give you a place to stand.
Foundation, what is the book of Genesis? And I think even even on top of that, it's covering the time frame, a very large time frame.
Very large time frame.
Which actually we don't actually know how large.
Yeah.
We know that it from the very beginning of the creation of the earth, right, to Joseph,
right,
at the end of Genesis, which we would, I don't even know what dates are, but like we're talking about thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah, I mean, in there you've got the creation account, and you've got the flood narrative, and you've got everything from Adam and Eve, all the way to the generations leading up to Egypt, Exodus moment, all that. So it's a long time.
Comparatively, just to put this in perspective, the book of Leviticus, for example, takes place in about the span, if I'm remembering, of just a few months.
Yes,
it's very short.
Yeah.
So that book is written in this very like narrow time frame in a very specific way, versus this book is like thousands and thousands of years. So it's just good to have that context a little bit.
That's right. Yeah, that's our foundation.
Foundation.
That gives you a place to stand. Hopefully that's clear enough. But we got to talk about now, why is it electric? Why is it thrilling? What is what are the joys in this book? And so let's maybe just me and you just spitball some, like, what are the things that when you go see a movie and you're like, you coming out and you loved it and you want to tell your friend, you're like, oh my gosh, Clint Eastwood, man, that guy's amazing. You're going to love this scene. Like, what are you saying when somebody goes, why am I going to give my time to these 50 chapters of this book that was written a bazillion years ago? What are you saying to them? What are the leading things? You're like, hey, just read this because blank. Favorite things, whatever. Go.
Well, okay, there's so many ways I can answer that, but who doesn't want to read about the beginning of the world? I mean, everybody has questions about that, and I think it's just the imagery in the way that it's written is just kind of wild and amazing. So, but apart from that, one of my favorite parts of the book of Genesis are the people. I mean, there's so much of the book. Chapter 12 on is people. 4 main people, but a lot of just family narrative, and it is messy. And I really enjoy this book that goes from like big sweeping narrative of all creation, and then this God who's so big, and animals are coming out of the ground, and stars are, being flung into existence, to like zoomed in human being, Abraham or Joseph in a pit, and God is there.
Yeah.
It's very, the juxtaposition of that I find really lovely, and especially when I got to all of the people in the second half of Exodus, especially Joseph's narrative. He's probably my favorite. I think that's, as I think about even...
God's my favorite. So that's fine that fallible man.
You're gonna say that in every
no, but for me, it's the Lord.
But
anyways, it's fine. Keep going.
I remember the first time really taking a deep dive into Joseph's story and spending time in it is I just gosh, what a life of isolation and hard and betrayal, and yet there's just this repeated idea that God was with him. God was with him. The God that you see in the beginning of this book, to be with somebody in betrayal and in poverty and in slavery and in a pit and in jail, falsely, that God is with that person, and he's not perfect. He's messy human too. And I think that really connected with me and gave me permission to believe and extend that to myself and go, God, are you with me in the same way, even though I can walk out in your creation and see just it's so huge and you feel so small. And even though I feel small, I don't know, I think that's a beautiful
the bigness and
paradox
smallness,
in Genesis. It's grandeur and it's minutia.
Well, and I think that it actually brings together what a lot of us naturally want to keep apart, which is I think most of religion picks a team. They either go, our God is transcendent, unreachable, he's big, he's done it all, he's out there. Or our God is super personal and he's right here, but it so lowers him that he loses some of his transcendence and majesty. I'm getting super nerdy, but like even in like super modern liberal Christian theology, like process theology and like open theology, God doesn't even know the future anymore. He's so intimate with your pain that like we don't even want to like humor the idea that he could be outside of time, can see the future, can work things. And so I feel like religion is always picking one or the other. He's huge, he's small. He's big, he's little. But you're right, Genesis brings them all together. And it's like, no, he's big and little. He's transcendent, he's outside of time. In the beginning, God. Not anything else, just beginning, just God. And he makes everything. He makes the cosmos. Like, it settles that for us. He's above everything. And also, he comes down into the smallest moment, into the littlest people's world, into a prison cell, and he communes, and he cares about it, and he condescends. And I think that's something that is really unique about the Bible, is that it's one of the only pieces of sort of religious literature that's bringing those two together in that unique way.
It is. It's really neat. Well, what about you? What's one of your favorite things about this book?
I love, I've been thinking about this a lot. I love that Genesis, means beginning. Like it comes from the first words of the book. In the beginning, Bereshit. I didn't cuss.
That?
It's
I don't know
Hebrew. Forget it. So it's kind of the beginning of everything, and I love that you can really trace whatever theme you're interested in, whatever topic is going to pop up in the Bible, in future books, in the New Testament even, whatever issue of theology you're curious about, whatever thing is going on in your life that you want wisdom or insight in, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better book than Genesis to give you some treatment of the topic. Now, maybe you hear that and you're like, I just thought it's just creation of the world, and then it gets some people going. You get the Tower of Babel. But no, so many things come back to. I wrote a quick list. This is just off the top of my head of areas of theology and things like that come all the way back to Genesis. Marriage and divorce, when Jesus is talking with the Pharisees in Matthew 19, and they're like, is it lawful to divorce a woman for any? Instead of going to Deuteronomy or part of the law, he goes all the way back to Genesis 2, and he says, don't you remember he who made them from the beginning said this? And he quotes about God's commentary of Adam and Eve coming together. So when you're thinking about how we should think about marriage, divorce, what marriage is, you go back to Genesis, gender and sexuality issues, like who I am as an embodied person. Does that even matter? I mean, those are questions we're asking as a culture right now. And then here you have in Genesis 1 that God made them male and female in his image. In his image, he created them. And we get this sense of the on-purposeness of our gendered bodies and how they're designed to work together, and how they reflect something about God. So like super relevant topics that go all the way back to the oldest book, in the world, or capital punishment in Genesis 9 with Noah, right? Or sanctity of life issues. The fact that he created us in his image means that every human being, you and I, and every person out there, good or bad, has intrinsic worth and dignity. Like this, again, these are some unique features of in terms of worldviews that Christianity puts forward, and it comes from this ancient book. God made us in his image, so we have worth because we reflect him. All kinds of the Trinity. The Trinity sort of pokes up in Genesis, right? Let us make man in our image. Or in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and the Spirit of the Lord was hovering over the deep. I mean, you're starting to see like, okay, there's a oneness to God, but there's also some kind of plurality that I don't fully understand. So you're getting sneak peeks of that. Or the most important thing, like the gospel, like Jesus, you get, theologians call it the Proto-Evangelium, right? The proto-gospel, the first gospel in Genesis 3, where as God's pronouncing his curses on man and woman, he looks at the serpent and he says, the seed of the woman will crush the head of the serpent. And you're right there, you're getting a little clue, something's coming. It's going to solve this thing. So I just
demonic activity.
Yes.
Genesis 3.
Angels and demons. Like, what do you want to talk about? I could take you to Genesis and I could show you, hey, here's the first flirtings with it, you know? Yeah. So it really is the origin of everything that we care about and have questions about. It starts right here. This episode of Clearly is brought to you by the sentences I'm about to say right now. How would you answer the question, who are the real bad guys out there? It's a trickier question than you might think. As a dad of 5 kids, I've had the challenge of having to answer that for my young ones as they're sorting out those types of things. And how you answer the question, who's good, who's bad, will really determine how you understand salvation and how all that works. It seems like a pretty big deal, big enough that I decided recently I should write a book about it. And guess what? I did. And here it is. It's called Real Bad Guys. It's a book about goodness and badness and how God sees the world. And if you ever ask these questions or you have kiddos that are asking these questions, this book is for you. You can get it on Amazon or any place books are sold. It's for readers 8 to 12 years old. I hope it blesses you and points you to the only real good guy, Jesus.
Do you have any personal, favorite verses in Genesis? Or even...
And the Lord rained down.
Or even moments where, God met you in it, that you were like, I will never forget when I read this.
Oh, my gosh. So many.
If you had to pick a favorite.
Well, the first thing that came to my mind was Genesis chapter 1. Our mentor was discipling us, and he was trying to give us some good theology of the priorities of the Bible. And he says, I want you to go read Genesis 1, and I want you to highlight every time the name God is mentioned. And so I did. I went through and I underlined it and did that. And by the time I was done, it's every 6th word is God. And then I came back to him. I was like, what was the point of that? And he's like, now you have to tell me, who is this book about? Is it about Jimmy? Is it about you and God's plan for your life? And I was forced to go, well, if word count has anything to do with it, this book isn't about me or my people. It's about God. And that was such a helpful thing. You go read Genesis 1 and see for yourself. God is just, he's the lead. He's the lead actor.
Right.
And so that was really forming for me to go from the first page of the Bible, the main character is not me, which we're all prone to do.
Right.
We're prone to want. The main character is God, and that's a good thing.
Right. Well, and some of us are just culturally trained to go to and the Bible is wisdom for us, for our lives, right? But sometimes that's all we go to it for is, what does this have to mean? What does this mean for me today? How can it help me? And we miss, I think, all of the glory that it has for us when we're kind of I know it's about God, but what does it tell me about how to live today?
That's right.
And it will, knowing about God, will tell you how to live. It will do that. But it's a slower path than that.
That's
true
right.
Wisdom is. But there are some moments for me, one in particular, this is maybe a small one, but I don't know what time of reading through Genesis it was, but I was starting to pay attention more to date references and time references because I was realizing that tells a story. Every word is in there on purpose. And if you remember in the book of Genesis, if you've read it before, Abraham, is called the father of many nations. So God tells him you're going to have a lot of children, a lot of descendants, and then he's old and can't have children. It's wow, that's hard. But eventually he has a son, Isaac, and Isaac marries. And Isaac and Rebekah have children, but there's these couple date references in there. And this was in the time when we were actually experiencing multiple miscarriages. Yep. So I was very sensitive to just the pregnancy theme in the scriptures and the infertility theme. And I remember noticing it mentions the age of Isaac when Jacob and Esau are born. And it mentions the age of Isaac when he marries Rebekah. And I went and looked, and I was like, oh, that's 20 years. And it says he prayed to the Lord that Rebekah would be able to bear children. Where is that? Genesis 25? Do you find it? But I was like, whoa, it doesn't even tell you that. But the ages, if you do the math, those numbers are telling you something. It's wow, that's just such a quick moment. But just here's another couple, another person in the Bible who's we're the family that's supposed to have a lot of children, and we got married, and it's been 20 years. Can you imagine? We haven't even been married 20 years yet. of like no children.
Yeah.
And the Lord does answer that, but sometimes just to slow down, I remember feeling very seen by God as I was in my own journey going, well, it hasn't been 20 years.
Yeah.
And you care about that. So
right.
there's been some neat moments of discovery for me that I feel like the Lord has used. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, but there's some things in Genesis though that are tricky and I think scare people off.
No. It's all simple, clear, easy, and if you don't understand it, you're broken. Welcome to Clearly.
Wow. Just
I'm
terrible.
Kidding. Take
You know, the proverb
a
says.
joke. Oh, don't Proverbs me. Don't you dare.
You're not even gonna let me quote it?
Ninja Christian me. Okay, quote.
He who deceives his neighbor and says I was only joking is like a man who shoots firebrands and deadly arrows. So.
But what do you really think about me?
Okay, can I just acknowledge for a second that sometimes Genesis is hard because there's some really strange and kind of unexplainable things I think that are in this book that can
Nephilim.
trip you up like Nephilim.
Oh, I hate when I cough that word. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh! Like what?
Yeah.
Nephilim, which what? Genesis 6.
Yeah.
Which, you
go read it on your own.
Yeah, or even like the creation account. I've had actually a lot of conversations with people, especially people in scientific fields of study.
Yeah.
Who, or even a lot of my family are petroleum engineers, right? Who are studying layers of the earth and things that are millions of years old. And they're like, it says it was created in 6 days. Like that doesn't connect like with what I know about science. So like that feels kind of tricky. A worldwide flood.
Yeah.
You've been Sodom and Gomorrah, fire raining down from heaven on people.
Yeah.
It's like so while it is wonderful, there are some things that are like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What do I do with that? If I'm just opening this book, the Bible, that people have commanded me to read, you're being faced right away with some like,
It's hard. It's hard on a lot of levels. I think the creation account has been for modern people really hard because we're going, gosh, that doesn't seem to accord with the fossil record or with the Grand Canyon. Was that created? All of those things. And I think one of the reasons it feels hard, that particular issue feels hard, is because we're bringing modern set of questions to an ancient text that was not actually interested in answering those questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Our questions are about like the how, the process, the timing, and if you read carefully Genesis 1, it's so not interested in that. Remember who the book is written to.
That's right. That helps so much.
It's written to ancient Near Eastern Jews on the cusp of the Promised Land that this book exists to give them a confidence that this land they're going into, God prepared for them. And when you put that hat on and you come back to Genesis 1, it's like, oh, okay. They're probably not asking is the earth 4 billion years old question? They're probably asking, is this land for us? Did God do this for us? And then when you read it, you're like, oh, okay. This is God saying, I have prepared this place for you to inherit. And it really changes things.
Right.
So I do think...
Yeah, how you describe anything depends on your audience.
That's right.
I mean, if I'm going to tell, my children about a medical thing coming up, right? I think one of our boys having cochlear implant surgery. It's like the way that I'm talking to them about that surgery and what's about to happen is going to be different than maybe an interested person who's a medical professional who's like, tell me about that surgery coming up. I'm like, I'm going to tell about the same event in two very different ways, depending on my audience and what my goal is in communicating to that audience, which doesn't mean that one way of telling is true and one is false, or one is better than another. It depends on why I'm telling you this information and what my ultimate goal is in sharing it with you.
That's right.
And just because we have questions about the creation account that's not answering doesn't mean it's not a trustworthy account.
That's right.
It's just an account of creation with a specific purpose to a specific audience.
That's so good. That's exactly right.
And that's true of the whole book as well.
Yeah, that's right.
As you're reading it.
I'll tell you another tricky thing in this book is just, and you're going to feel this in lots of the books of the Bible, it's that whole prescriptive versus descriptive tension. am I reading this and this telling me what ought to be, or just what happened? The issue of polygamy. I mean, you're gonna read this as a modern person here in the West,
Right.
where polygamy, at least for the next 30 seconds until some law changes, is frowned upon, and you're gonna go, wait a minute, I thought, aren't we like one spouse people?
Right.
But these jokers, they're rolling in double digits. Like what's happening?
Rebecca and Leah and that whole drama. Yep.
So
I mean, not Rebecca and Leah, Rachel and Leah. Anyway.
did you call her Becca?
I said Rebecca and Leah. There was Rachel and Leah.
Yeah.
Jacob's two wives, right? So there's a long narrative of the book of Genesis about Jacob and his two wives.
The whole nation of Israel came about because of multiple wives and concubines. So, and you're like, wait should I? Am I just one? Right? It's just one. So I do think you're gonna have to wrestle down some of those questions too, and not just the polygamy stuff, but like you're reading these accounts of these lives of broken people, and at least one of my impressions is like, what am I? Is this story of Jacob in here? What am I supposed to be emulating in his life?
Right.
Is his whole life a warning to me? Is like is just that verse the thing that I go, okay, if given the chance to wrestle with God, do it. But otherwise, don't do anything Jacob does. Like, what do you...
Yeah.
Jacob, Isaac especially, to me, have always been tricky because it's like, I don't know what God is commending here.
Right.
Or if it's just like, this is just stuff that unfolded. So I do think those are things that you're going to have wisdom as you come to those stories to go, okay, the other parts of the Bible should inform how I'm discerning the goodness or badness or of their behaviors and what to sort of embrace and what to so
it's kind of a wake-up call from moment one in the Bible that there are no heroes.
That's good.
In the Bible except one, except Jesus. That really there's no other hero but God, and everybody else is just a mess like we are. And actually, that's not how many of us maybe we're taught in Sunday school, or maybe how we're tempted to even teach it to our own children. We want a hero. We want the people of God to be emulatable people. Is that a word?
It is now.
But, they're just normal, broken, fallen people post Genesis 3. And that is sometimes surprising to read in a holy text.
That's right.
In the holy scriptures, to read about a mess, and yet God saying, it's through you I'm going to do something. It's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Again, we're learning something about God, which is, I think, coming back to your point about the Bible's a book about God. We see that from Genesis 1, and if we read it that way, and instead of pressing down on the people in the Bible, Jacob and Joseph and Isaac and Abraham, and instead go, what am I learning about God? In this moment?
Yeah.
What am I learning about His grace or His mercy?
That is the way to read it, because when you're reading Abraham's story, and like every 30 minutes, he's like lying about his wife so he can save his hide, and you're like, what? What you really should be looking at is the fact that our God sticks with him and ends up rescuing him and blessing him even in the midst of his failures. And then you go, oh, okay, I'm discovering that the God of Israel is not a God of karma or payback. He's a God who makes a promise to do good. And when he makes that promise, he sticks by it, even if you're a knucklehead. And man, what an encouragement that is to me.
Yep.
That when I fail, his forness for me, it doesn't go away. That he is for me in my stumblings. When we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he can't deny himself. And I think that's one of the things you pick up on in the book of Genesis is God really becomes, from the first pages of your Bible, the hero of the story. And that really brings us maybe to the last question that we wanted to ask in this, which is, in all these book episodes that we're doing, we're going to try to ask something like, okay, if this book of the Bible wasn't in the Bible, what would we be losing? What would we be missing? I think it's a clarifying question. So, Kel, why don't you take a swing at it? So, Genesis gets popped out, and now we're to 65 books. Besides that being heretical and all that, what are we losing, missing out on that we get? Yeah.
Well, I feel like if we lose the beginning of the story, and that changes everything. I mean, there's that's the first thing that comes to mind. Is it's like entering a movie 1/3 in, and you've missed the introduction of the main characters, the main tension, like what is even happening and why is it happening? You've missed all that. Genesis is the setting of the stage for so much of human history. It's like here, everything comes back to this. Everything comes back to this book. And everything will culminate in things in some ways that mirror this book. So it is, the beginning of the story matters so much for any story, for any narrative. And the Bible, though it is 66 books, is one story.
That's right.
And so to lose the garden and the fall and the growth of human history from the beginning and all of that, I think, you lose the ability to make sense of the rest of what you're reading.
Yeah. Yeah. To say it another way, Genesis sets up what the whole rest of the Bible is all aiming at.
Right.
So if you in Genesis, you discover really all the components that make up a worldview, right? A worldview is made up of answering four questions. Where'd we come from? What went wrong? How's it get fixed? And where are we going? And in the book of Genesis, all those four questions, in some form or another, are getting answered or at least hinted at. We know where we came from. Our God made us. We know what went wrong. Genesis 3 says we sinned and the earth cracked because of it. Now there's a curse hanging over us and we've lost relationship with God. How's it get right again? How's it get fixed? Well, we find out in Genesis 3, God made a promise. I'm going to fix it. Not you. I'm going to fix it through the seed of a woman. So someone's coming, he says, that's going to right this ship, that's going to fix things. And where's it heading to? Well, it's heading to a place where God, who has now been alienated from man because of man's sin, is now brought back together with man through this seed of the woman. But if you don't have Genesis, then you're just reading the rest of these books, not knowing the worldview that makes the whole thing make sense.
Right. Because God is not a plan B God. It's not like, human sin enters and he's like, well.
That's right.
I gotta go with plan B. It's like, no, it's a restoration of plan A. And if you don't understand plan A, you're not going to understand what God is after and what he's doing in the rest of redemptive history. So
that's right.
And we want you to not just listen to us talk about it. And maybe you have read the book of Genesis before. Maybe it's been a while, or maybe you've never read every chapter. You've just kind of spent time in some of those key moments. It is so valuable to spend time in the book. And so not only do we want you to be excited about it, and we hope you are, we're going to be giving you a printable PDF, a one-page printable PDF. There'll be a link to it in the show notes.
What?
That you can print out, fold in half, and stick in your Bible, and take with you on your journey reading Genesis for yourself with just some tools, some help, some things to keep in mind and look forward to as you make your way through this book yourself and spend time in it. Because it's not enough just hear about it. You need to read it for yourself and see for yourself what's there.
That's right. That's good. Genesis. Hey, that was a pretty good harmony. You gonna do it at the same time?
No.
Okay.
I'm not confident enough. Okay, guys, don't leave yet.
Wait. Don't go. Hey, listen, we have news for you. We don't just have news, we have something to give you. And Kelly's going to tell you what it is. Kelly, tell them what it is.
Did you know that for less than a latte, you can get a one-page guide that'll help you understand an entire book of the Bible?
What?
Yes.
No, that sounds like heaven, and I'm not dead yet.
Wow. Okay,
but it's true.
Yes.
Welcome to the Clearly One Pager. cooking. Here it is. If you're listening, you can't see.
You can't see this amazing thing.
We made something for you.
Yes.
Tell them what it is. What
so
is this?
It fits on one sheet of paper.
One pager. Do you see?
You print out at home, front and back. You fold it in half. Again, get on YouTube or our Instagram, and so you can see this. Folds in half. This one is titled Clearly Genesis.
Clearly Genesis. How clever is that? Clearly Genesis. What's going on with our branding?
Wow. And you are going to take this with you as you read the book of Genesis. It's going to help you identify themes, events, main characters, repeating ideas, learn more about each book. And guess what? We're not giving you the answers.
No. That's not what we do around here.
This is not information.
We're making you work for it. See, this is a guide. This is a little hand reaching out, a little Yoda hand grabbing your hand as you're reading a book of the Bible and saying, with me come, and you start reading, and then there's all these great blanks, like categories that maybe you didn't even think, I should be on the lookout for that, like the theme of like land and people and blessing in the book of Genesis. We got a chart to like help you like find all those, discover those. Where are they?
Or have you ever considered the similarities between the creation account in Genesis like 1, 2, and 3 and what's happening in Genesis 8 and 9?
What?
There's a chart for you to fill out to explore those similarities and so much more.
And watch this. You fold it in half, and then you're like, what am I going to do with this? Is it too big? No, it's not too big, friends. Boom! Inside a Bible, closed. Where'd it go?
It goes with you through your whole reading of the book of Genesis.
It fits in your Bible.
There's things to do in your Bible that you can check off. So we're...
Wait, hold on. How much are we talking about? Is this $1,800, Kelly? $1,900? How much is this going to cost?
Less than a latte.
Less than a latte. Well, that is about $1,800. Oh, $5.
$5.
Put it on the screen. $5.
$5. Go to our website or look in the show notes. You'll find a link right there for you to go and see this. Download it for $5, print it out at home. We have a color copy. We have a black and white one that's formatted just for black and white printing.
We're practically giving this thing away. And we're going to be doing this for, wait for it, every single book of the Bible.
That's right. We're really excited about it. And so one other thing we want to let you know about is that these are free for our current monthly podcast partners. So if you're one of our podcast partners right now, you will get this in your Patreon account. It will come directly to you. And if you're planning on buying more than, if you're thinking about this whole month, we're going to cover Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. You're like, I want all 4 of those. That's about the same price as just joining us as a monthly partner. And you get the benefit of access to all of the live recordings to join us along the way. So consider becoming a monthly partner with us. You're going to get each one of these sent directly to you as they're released.
I don't think I'm overstating it when I say that if you don't join us in this, and if you don't get these, you are making the worst decision of your entire life. I don't think that's an overstatement.
No,
or an understatement. I don't even think it's a statement.
Not true, but we do think they're really, really cool.
They are.
Check
it out. Clearly,
I'm excited to use this.
One-pagers. All right, we're done talking about it. We love you guys. We just want to serve you, and we hope this serves you.
Click the link, go explore it, buy it, check it out, read Genesis. Now that we got you hyped about Genesis episode, now go read it for yourself with this clearly one-pager. And we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.